Mr. Roy Dean, welcome back. It's been a minute, or maybe a little bit more than a minute. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's excellent to see you, Stephan. I appreciate you having me on.
You just got back from Australia. What was that like? I've never been.
Australia was amazing. It was my first time. I've traveled to many countries in Europe and all over, but I always respected the distance that Australia is. And so I kind of have been putting it off, but it was wonderful. I have a few affiliates. I have a new affiliate over there. I wanted to interact with him and ended up teaching four seminars over the course of 2 weeks. And it was great. Very kind people, incredibly international, eclectic scene. I was stationed kind of near the Sydney Opera House and that harbor. And and the beaches. I mean, they couldn't wait to show me the beaches, Bondi Beach, very youthful. It was a breath of fresh air.
It's funny when Asian tourists come to Vancouver, where I live, you see them taking photos of squirrels, and you're like, oh my God, like, you know, but they don't have squirrels there. So I think if I went to Australia, I'd be that guy taking pictures and videos of kangaroos, and the locals be rolling their eyes at me, going, "Mate, that's just a kangaroo." Yeah, but we don't have them, and they're cool.
They are, and that was definitely on the list of things to do. I believe it was called Taronga Zoo, which was near Sydney. We took a ferry over there, and I got to interact with. I wasn't allowed to touch, but was able to interact with koalas, and they have emus and kangaroos and other really cozy, cute creatures. So it was great. I mean, the koalas, that was kind of a bucket list item, so I'm happy to have interacted with them.
You didn't have a kangaroo try to do a rear naked choke on you? Have you seen those videos of them of them choking each other?
No,
It,
no.
it's nuts. Like they'll fight, they'll do the boxing thing, and then they'll stand on their tail and they'll do like a double kick with their feet. But if they get
Yeah,
behind them, if they get behind the other kangaroo or even behind a dog, they will basically short choke it, hadakajime, and put the other critter unconscious. I'll send you a video after. It's insane, but I guess jiu-jitsu works regardless of if you're male, female, or kangaroo.
interspecies. It's a technology that's effective.
We just need to adopt kangaroo style in the kung fu pantheon.
Right, right. All we need is a tail to kick it off.
Hey everyone, I just want to tell you about a new project I've been working on. There's the Kimura Roadmap, which is coming out today. And the way to understand this project is that I'm applying a positional hierarchy and a positional approach to the Kimura, the same way that a positional approach gets used in traditional jiu-jitsu. In traditional jiu-jitsu, we know that there's the mount, we know that there's the guard, we know there's side control, we know there's knee mount. And if you go to 100 academies tonight and you watch people rolling, that about 90% of their time is going to be spent in one of these six positions. Well, the same thing's true with the Kimura. And it changes how you apply the Kimura. I mean, the traditional steps to teach a submission are to introduce it as a series of isolated techniques. Here are the steps that you do to finish the Kimura from side control. Here's a move that you do from the guard and so on. And that's useful, but it has very strong limitations. A positional approach to submission training means that you focus first on being able to control your opponent within that position, within your attack. The most important thing becomes remaining control of the position the same way that you'd control an opponent in the mount before you move to an armbar. You want to control them first and submit them second. Now, if it takes you longer to actually finish the submission, no problem. You have all the time in the world to make them tap. This approach also makes it much harder for your opponent to thrash his way out of a submission and to turn into a big scramble, because your emphasis and what you've been training using specific training methods is to approach it like a position and methodically hold him down while you methodically work towards breaking his grips and finishing the submission. And there's one more thing. By approaching it like a position, you can use the submission, in this case the Kimura, to move your opponent. You can use the Kimura to sweep your opponent, say, from the bottom of half guard to get to the top of half guard, then use the Kimura to pass his guard, and then use the Kimura to get to mount. And this way, even if you completely screw up on the Kimura, you've still improved your position. And this puts pressure on your opponent. It makes him do stupid things. And it takes you from positions where it might be harder to finish the Kimura to positions where it's much, much easier to finish the Kimura. Training the Kimura as a position means you'll have answers to everything that your opponent throws at you. If he does this, no problem. You do that. If he does this other thing, no problem. You have answers ready to go. And again, it cuts down on the variability, and it cuts down on the chasing your opponent, and it cuts down on not knowing what to do, because you've rehearsed the core Kimura positions, of which there are about 12. And if you know what to do in each of these 12 positions, it's going to be incredibly difficult for an opponent to get away from you. So ironically, a position-first approach ends up resulting in far more submissions, not less. If you want to find out more about this project, go to grapplearts.com/Kimura. I think this is going to really help a lot of people, and hopefully you're one of them. Probably someone in Japan is building artificial tails that people can wear to attend various anime conventions. So we just have to adapt it.
I'm open to it. I love so many things. I went to Japan this summer and was reminded of just how beautiful that land is and how everything works and how organized it is and punctual. It was that was a nice break from kind of the hectic media sphere of America.
So when you do all this traveling, is it mostly to visit affiliate clubs and do seminars?
The Japan thing was actually part of my buddy's project, Nick Gregoriadis. It's called the Musashi Experience. And I had done a series of, I think I did a number of seminars in Europe, visiting clubs, and also did one for an app called Matador. It was their first kind of big conference. So I did that. And then as a reward to myself, I went to Japan, and it was a lead trip. Nick and a guy named Max Whittle, who's a breathwork expert, PhD, they led this tour through Japan. We started in Tokyo, and then we went up to kind of the northern region, and then we finished in Kyoto. And it was great. And they led us to areas that I normally as a tourist would have never gone to. So it was, there was a temple at the top of a mountain when we went to Nagano, and we didn't see, there were no tourists there. There was no way. We saw not a single soul. And going up for, it was probably an hour and a half walk to the top of this mountain. Stone steps, a thick forest. The air was amazing. It felt hyper oxygenated. And doing breath work at this temple, at the top of this mountain, it was so easy to hold our breath for a long period of time compared to in Tokyo, at a park in Tokyo, like near the Imperial grounds. I just noted that massive difference. And there were some other areas, going to local onsen and hot springs. That was another great thing that we were able to do. And so we didn't hit the Golden Temple, like Kinkakuji in Kyoto. We didn't hit the major stuff. We avoided all of that and had some other kinds of adventures. So it was great. Probably the highlight for me was going to the Kodokan and taking a private lesson with, I think it was a Rokudan, kind of red and white belt. For me, going back to Japan, having made a living off of a career out of jiu-jitsu, but having started in Japan as an exchange student doing judo, to come full circle, to be able to make it back to Japan through the art of jiu-jitsu and see the table and chair where Kano actually sat and would observe. Dude, it hit me. It was a really powerful moment in my time as a martial artist. So a lot of appreciation. That was definitely a memorable moment.
When you look at the history of martial arts, but it's also true looking at the history of yoga, there are so many shitty people at the top of their little pyramids. If you dig into most of the major yoga lineages, the guy at the top was an alcoholic or a womanizer or abused a whole bunch of people or generally abusive. And it's also true in the martial arts. Often, I know Ueshiba from Aikido changed a lot, but he went through a phase of essentially being a militaristic Japanese expansionist. We can argue about that if you disagree.
There's nothing to argue. He absolutely was, and he supported some fascists, Japanese fascists, imperialists.
But it does seem that Kano was pretty much a decent human being and tried to emphasize being a decent human being in the context of the sport, which is really a refreshing change. I mean, thank God for Kano.
Thank God for Kano. And I read his book Mind Over Muscle, and the words are as true today as they were back then. It's a moral and physical means of education. It's not just about athletics. It's so much more than athletics. It's to invigorate a populace and create a stronger society. And he, as an educator, he emphasized those points. I find myself resonating with that and emphasizing that more and more. Mr. Harris was a great role model in this sense, my teacher, when he started emphasizing community. He's like, Roy, it's about community. Most people do this as a hobby. And, whereas many other instructors were like, no, I want you to compete and bring glory back. He just had a wider vision. And as I get older, I resonate with the wider vision of what this is. It's a human technology with the occasional kangaroo, kicking in. But this is a way of transforming people through resistance and, stimulus response. Back in the day, like the Russian weightlifting coaches would refer to the weight as the irritant. Your body grows in relationship to the irritant that you receive. So, the irritant is your opponent on the mat, but you grow because of it, and you become desensitized in all the right ways and sensitized in all the right ways. So it's really a marvelous thing. I'm glad that I've dedicated my life to teaching and sharing this art. As I get older, I realize that it gets deeper and deeper.
So when your instructor was referring to community, what did he mean? Like, how did that manifest itself in the world?
So community is thinking beyond kind of the ego of the ryu, the ego of the dojo. It's like, oh, I'm the instructor, and then here are my black belts, and they win gold medals, they bring them back, they bring glory to the family, to the in group. But it's beyond in group, out group. What you're doing is creating a pillar where people feel safe, where you can have an organic fellowship of men and women to create a sense of community and camaraderie. I mean, back in the day, it was easy to just have faith in religion. But as science has conveniently and not so conveniently poked holes in religious dogma, it's space above us, not heaven. And religious claims are just easily disputed. People are having to believe in other things and having to connect in other ways. And we can kind of make it through the piercing of the veil of the literalism of religion. And I feel like martial arts, jiu-jitsu is not exclusive in this, but martial arts, where there's a trusted community of people that you can be around, interact with, have faith in, and develop a level of trust, that is integral to having a strong and secure, economy as well as society.
You know what this is a little bit reminiscent of is the conversation I had with Tom Kalos on this podcast a few months ago, where he was talking about, there's a community within the dojo, but then there's also a community outside the dojo. And for example, going to do community projects, cleaning up a section of the neighborhood, like physically going out there and picking up garbage, helps that community. But it's also a clever marketing strategy because then you're seen to be out there doing something. People generally want to send their kid to martial arts for personal development, discipline, and the ability to kick ass. Mm-hmm. So who are you going to send them to? Well, maybe you're going to send them to the people who you actually seen out there in the community helping and working. And we can continue expanding that sense of community A very narrow definition of community is me and maybe my family and maybe one or two friends. And then we expand that a little bit. Okay, me and everyone in my school. And then we expand that a little bit. How about me and everyone in my city? And ultimately, if you keep on expanding enough, you end up with me and all humanity. I mean, that's a pretty heavy lift.
For
I'm
sure.
not there yet. I'm definitely not there
Right.
yet.
Yeah, I mean those ever expanding circles, and jujitsu allows you to understand how wide the ring goes, especially traveling around. You know,
Mm.
jujitsu gives you, it's the ultimate excuse to travel. Whether you're traveling for a competition, you're traveling to see, people came from other cities to um, you know, take part in my seminar. I was really grateful for that because they've been seeing me online for years and they wanted to, be there. And so there was also a lot of inter-dojo um, fraternization on this recent trip, where guys normally wouldn't get together because they have, whatever, they're part of separate tribes. No, they were all able to come together, and they, apparently it helped. It helps the overall vibe. We're ultimately all on the same team. We just like to categorize differently because we're uptight as humans.
So I know that something you've been working on a lot recently is the history of jiu-jitsu in North America. So this sounds like a gigantic project. Why don't you explain to me what exactly it is that you're doing?
Thank you. I feel like this is one of the best projects I've ever been involved with. I feel like it has a historical angle and also kind of humanizes that first generation of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu masters that pioneered the art here in America, which was in many ways the hero's journey for them to take a technology that they learned somewhere else and bring it to this land and empower kind of the local populace, fire from the mountain. And it was, an act of courage and in all kinds of ways, moving to a different land, challenge matches. I've been working really hard on this project over the last year, and it's called Groundswell, the pioneers of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu in America. So check this out. I got a couple of props here. So this is a book that was really influential on me growing up when I was like 19. Now it wasn't in this form. This is a coffee table style book called Aikido Pioneers. This is Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido. And this book was in a paperback form. It was published by Aikido Journal. And I, read it and it had a great effect on me. And inside this book, it has like, this is, you know, Hisao, who is that? Kamada. Perhaps you've never heard of him. And that's the whole point, this is pre-war students. And then there's another volume, post-war students of the Aikido master, Morihei Ueshiba. So what those books did back in the day, the main Aikido organization, the Aikikai, had their own kind of, political line and narrative. There was a lot of infighting with some of the people, like, for example, like Koichi Tohei. He was supposed to take over for Morihei Ueshiba, but then he was attempted on, but then he had a falling out with Aikikai. And and he delivered it really cold, like at a dinner. He said, "Here's my resignation." And I think there was something with somebody's sister, another instructor's sister, that he was like, a tale as old as time, right? So there were
Good,
break-offs
good,
and
good thing that jiu-jitsu is immune from such drama.
amen, amen. So when it comes to basically just having first-person accounts, not having to write a narrative, but just interviewing people and having their account of what the truth was and what it was like training with this person and the development of the art and their own personal experience. You can't get any closer to the truth than first-hand accounts. And the founder of Aikido Journal, Stanley Pranin, he actually conducted these. He spoke like 7 languages. Brilliant man. And he was able to document the truth and the history of the art by speaking to him in Japanese and conducting these interviews and translating them to English. Okay, monumental effort. And my partner in this project, Josh Gold, he is the executive editor. He inherited Aikido Journal from Stanley Pranin when he passed. And he thought, hey, maybe we should do this for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. What do you think, Roy? And I was like, dude, that's an amazing idea. Let's do it. So the last year, we have been working very hard, coordinating interviews with 9 different masters. We've completed 8 of them. And we're waiting on the 9th one to return from Brazil. He's had surgery down there and he'll be back. We'll complete it in early November. And I'm really, really pleased with how it's come out. Of course, you need a team to do something at the level that we envisioned it. So it's not just me, it's my partner, Josh, as well. The photographer is key. We have the same photographer for each of these masters. There's no historic photographs inside. Instead, the photographs are like this. I'll just pull up a few. This is going to be printed on the highest quality paper available, just kind of like a little bit of a layout, super modern, super clean. These are just printed,
That's a stunning photo.
He crushed it every time. Gary Payne is the photographer's name, and he usually does a lot of musicians and more in kind of the fine art world. But he is also a black belt in Aikido and purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Fabio Santos. So he has an appreciation and understanding and a knack for making them feel comfortable. So these are stunning photographs. We also have a professional copy editor. So it's premiere. I'm really proud of how it's coming out, and we're doing a Kickstarter campaign later this month, roughly October 20th through November 20th, to crowdfund this and get this printed and bring it over to the States. It should be shipping out in the spring and delivering in the spring of 2026. It's been a lot of work, but I think this is going to be a really solid step for putting Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in kind of the historical record. It's already noted, but to put it in this way, to have a piece of art that people could have in their academy or just at home, where they can reflect on the people that paved the way, in an era where we have $1 million jiu-jitsu tournaments. These people did it for free. Mm-hmm. And there's quite a bit of courage, and I applaud each and every one of these masters.
I have so many questions, but we'll start with this. Who was the first person to teach jiu-jitsu in North America? And by jiu-jitsu, I mean Brazilian jiu-jitsu, not the Japanese lineages of jiu-jitsu. Right. It gets a little bit muddled, of course, but...
Yeah. We believe it's Clark Gracie's father. He came to California, I think Northern California, around the Bay Area, during that time and began teaching. And we tried to involve a number of Gracies in the book. But eventually we realized, man, I think it's coming out better to be Gracie adjacent than to actually kind of reaffirm the established narrative of what it was like coming to the country.
The Kid Peligro narrative, basically.
The Kid Peligro, the Jorge Gracie, kind of the main line, the main line narrative, which is fine. It's important to have that narrative. And there's a lot of truth in that narrative, for sure. And without the Gracies and what Hoist did in the UFC, there wouldn't be any of this. I certainly would not be able to. People couldn't say jiu-jitsu. I had a black belt in judo. I came back to the U.S. After my being an exchange student in Japan, and people could not say the word jiu-jitsu. They had no idea what it was. In fact, it was the people that knew what it was in the Aikido world looked down on it. They were like, oh, that dirty stuff. Oh, we do it clean. We don't have to sully our hands with that. So jiu-jitsu has had a massive turnaround in public perspective, and it's elevated itself in the public consciousness thanks to what Hoist did, what the Gracies did, and the rise of mixed martial arts.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been elevated in Brazil as well. If you talk to a certain generation of Brazilians who've come over to North America who weren't involved in the sport, the Gracies did not have a good name. And jiu-jitsu guys did not have a good name. They were considered to be a bunch of thugs who'd be out there running around beating people up. So that, at least, how much of that is true, I'm sure some of it's true, but that was the public perception of at least a significant portion of Brazilians who didn't participate in the sport.
Yeah, I've heard many stories of of that, and it's unfortunate that that's how was part of its evolution. And even dojo storming here when they first came over, that was a little, distasteful. Pedro Sauer, one of the pioneers we feature in the book, he's got so many great stories, but he talks about issuing a formal challenge to every martial arts school in Utah on letterhead, and he said it wasn't well received.
How many challenge matches did he get out of that?
No, he got many, including the one versus Lance Bachelor, which is online, the bodybuilder.
Oh,
and then there were some others he had to undergo, including when he first landed here in the States. So it's pretty amazing what these individuals went through. Some of them had good lives in Brazil. Pedro Sauer was a stockbroker, although he got kidnapped at gunpoint, and that was part of his impetus to move to the U.S. And Claudio França, he was living at the beach in a condo, in the same building he had his academy. He had a good life, very comfortable, but they felt a yearning to spread it to America, and they saw the opportunity to really make a difference. They saw how hungry Americans were to learn this, the respect that they had for the people that were bringing it over. And it was a difficult journey, but ultimately one that was worth it to them.
for sure. I think this is something that most of us don't really have an appreciation of. I mean, my parents aren't from North America, they're from Europe. At some point, they had to pack everything up. And basically, I don't really know much about, in their case, Canada, but I'm going to move there and move there blind in a world where there was so much less information than there is today. I mean, now if you were going to move to Moldova, you could be an expert on that country after a couple of days of internet research. But, how would you have decided to move there in the 1950s? There would have been one book in the library, maybe.
Right. I mean, maybe that lack of information was actually a blessing for some people, because if they really knew the full extent of and all the complexities, maybe they would have overcomplicated it in their minds. And sometimes you just need to have just enough information to say,
Now, there are different lineages of jiu-jitsu coming down from Maeda, essentially, in Brazil. Did any of those strands make it into that first wave of instructors here in North America?
That is a good question. Like the Oswaldo Alves lineage and the Fada lineage, I don't think so. I don't think they made it into that mainly that first generation. We are essentially sticking to Gracie adjacent, kind of the Torrance Horian type of basically stemming off of Elio. But we're also going to include Homero Jacare Cavalcanti, co-founder of Alliance. And they were kind of twice removed from that. Pedro Sauer spent some time training with those guys, and Frangia spent some time training with those gentlemen like Fabio Gurgel. They were brown belts together. So yeah, it is not all directly from Elio, but the majority of it is.
Yeah. And so when you're doing these interviews, what are you trying to get out of them? Like, sort of, what are the questions that you're asking all of them?
Well, there were definitely some uniform questions to kind of get everybody on the same page, and something that's universal. So typically we would talk about, who they began training under, and when they received their black belt, and what was the circumstance? What did it mean to them to receive that black belt? And for most of them, it was their greatest professional achievement, even though they may have other degrees, other certifications, professional certifications. By and large, that black belt meant the most to them. And then we also wanted to come up with the best questions that we could. So typically we would do a pre-interview. We would interview one of their top students. So for example, for Ricardo Miller of Frangia, we interviewed Jeff Glover, and we asked him about what it was like. And that was deeply insightful, what it was like when he was here, someone that was close to them during that era. And Jeff, Jeff was, that was great, because he was outlining, he's like, Frangia, he wasn't trying to hold back and make the Brazilians better, hold back on the Americans. He was going to make the Americans as good as the Brazilians, if not better. He fully embraced this new land, and he was creating top competitors all the way through. Tyrone Glover was Frangia's first black belt, which I happened to be there that day at City Boxing in San Diego. And Frangia gave a speech about coming here with a pregnant wife, no English, and a dream. And here he was awarding his first black belt to Tyrone, who was an amazing athlete, incredibly intelligent. He was also like a Pride protege, upcoming athlete who was selected for that. He had the world in his hand, and Frangia made that happen. So, and he mentions in the book, that was his way of giving back. For him to produce the top students in the sport was his way of saying thank you to America for giving him the opportunity to come here and share his art. So we took it seriously to develop the right questions for these individuals so that we could really get the most out of them.
Yeah. It's funny, there's always this sounds derogatory, it's not meant to be derogatory, but there's this peaked in high school thing that I often see in jiu-jitsu where everybody thinks that the art was the best basically when they were in their own heyday. Right? Like if you were competing in the late 90s, well, that was the real jiu-jitsu. If you're competing in the early 2000s, well, that was the real jiu-jitsu. It's all going to hell now. And so there's a tendency to put the past on a pedestal and talk about how much better it was then. In contrast to that, people like Fabio Gurgel have pointed out that objectively, far more matches end in submission now than they used to. You can bitch and moan all you want about 50-50 guard or some rule, but there are more submissions being landed now than there were. So how did these people that you're talking to, who've been around a very long time, I'm guessing their average age is 60 to 70.
Correct.
How did they see the jiu-jitsu of the past compared to the jiu-jitsu of today?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't think they frown upon the jiu-jitsu of today. But for example, Steve Maxwell, he was talking about, 50-50, and he's like, he thought they should just be broken up and kind of reset. But, that is probably just a lack of exposure to the depth of the modern leg game, where, you can disassemble the 50-50. You can stand up. You can have high awareness of what the knee line is. You can be able to have, there are ways out of it. But if you're unfamiliar, you're purely locked in, So that was one example. And opinions vary. Some people feel like it's not like the modern jiu-jitsu. It's good. It will work, but you can't use it in a fight. And there is some legitimacy to that. If you look at like Frank Mir versus, I forget his name, Ian something or another, British Bulldog back in the day, Frank was going for the heel hook and he got pounded out. There are people that go for leg locks and get pounded out. Do you really want to do an Imanari roll in the street? Probably not. Judo is far superior in that sense. For street fighting, judo is underestimated in its
Sure.
efficacy.
But why hit someone with your fist when you can hit them with a planet?
Exactly. Exactly. And the planet never misses.
Hmm.
It's amazing how much it's evolved, and the whole, dynamic sphere of attacks has really been expanded. That other half, that lower half of the body, people navigate that so adroitly, so smoothly. Just how you can transition from like arm lock to triangle to arm lock so smoothly. They can navigate from, heel hook, knee bar, heel hook, all kinds of bear trap, whatever, and then transition to another system. There's so many ways of navigating that, and it's really been sussed out. And I do feel like Eddie Cummings, and although my instructor Roy Harris is probably the first to introduce leg locks to BJJ, he was too far ahead of himself, like he normally is. He was doing heel hook seminars in 1999, having learned it from a Russian Sambo master. But there was no place to display the efficacy of it,
Hmm.
largely. Grappler's Quest wasn't even invented, and that was like one of the first major no-gi competitions. And if you look at, why Hoist was successful, it's because we had media displaying it and people watching.
I think all the leg locks were there, like with a couple of exceptions. I don't know, a Z lock. No, there's probably Z locks in old school Sambo. Uh, Woj locks. There probably weren't Woj locks being used consistently in the 90s and 2000s. But I think the big difference was, as you said, that it became a positional system. It's the same thing that helped people understand jiu-jitsu when it's not just a bunch of moves, but there are these hub positions. There's side control, there's mount, there's the back, there's turtle, there's guard. And in each of those, there's some basic strategies. Yeah, you could go from the bottom of mount to someone's back by some act of God, but that's not a high percentage move. You're probably going to go from the bottom of mount to guard to sweeping them to then taking their back. That's a more carved out route. Applying that same kind of logic to things like the leg lock game, you've got these various pit stops or hubs that you're navigating between. And I'm just working on a project now about the Kimura, where we're basically considering the different Kimura positions as hubs. So long as you have the grip, you might start on the bottom of half guard, then you end up in a T Kimura, then you end up in a Kimura from side control, then you end up in a near side Kimura, then you end up on the back with the Kimura. It's thinking about these things in a positional game rather than a bunch of moves. I think that really did transform the game.
Well said, well said. Yeah, so you can hang there. You can hang there, and then you can make your adjustments as you need to, like honey hole, 411, whatever, like being able to, because I remember back in the day watching Mark Lehman versus, I think it was Henner Gracie at a Grappler's Quest. That was a super hyped match. And, Henner would fall back for the ankle, and if he didn't get it, then he'd come back up. It wasn't like I'm controlling, and then you're dominating from that position. The guy doesn't know how to get up because the amount of control wasn't there. It was, I wouldn't say a Hail Mary. Definitely in some situations it is a Hail Mary. Like, okay, we've got to make this happen. I'm going to fall back. But being able to positionally dominate with the legs, whether you're holding a position, locking in on the femur, two femurs against one to establish your dominance, or it's being able to float the person and use X guard and be able to relock into a position, or backside entries into there. You're able to exist and come back around. All these systems are about, if you fail, you can go to something else. You can go to something else. You can go to something else.
Yeah. I just got to jump back a little bit because I think it was on this podcast, but I was giving Ryan Hall, I was teasing him about ruining jiu-jitsu by focusing on 50-50. And he apologized for ruining jiu-jitsu, and then actually went on to totally demolish my argument by saying You know, if you were in a street fight and you end up on the bottom and your goal is to stop the other guy from punching you in the face, it's pretty hard to do better than 50-50. It's like, okay, that's a fair point. Like, yes, it doesn't
Yeah.
take into account getting stabbed or shot. Cool. Welcome to jiu-jitsu. It usually doesn't take account of those things. But, if you had to hold somebody and wait for the cops, you could do worse than 50-50.
You could, but the legs are so powerful, and people are wild. I could see if you're in 50-50 and you're controlling that other leg, boom, you're good. But if you are in 50-50 and you're not controlling the legs, people can get. I was actually, they were talking about up kicks, and as I go through all the notes, we go through these interviews. Back to the book, we go through these interviews through many many stages, massaging the English, creating a ton of footnotes and sidebars to contextualize. And dude, up kicks are so powerful, and I actually sent a couple to my partner Josh Gold about, because Renzo Gracie versus Oleg Taktarov, boom, one up kick, boom, knocked out. Jerry Bolander versus, I think it was Murilo Bustamante, boom, knocked out. He was kind of not doing great in that one. He was getting out wrestled. And then one up kick and lights out. People underestimate the power of up kicks and just wild kicks. So yeah, but if you can control someone from 50-50 and isolate that other leg with control, then you are definitely golden.
In terms of the book, what's next? You've got to, I know book publishing takes a very long time, but you've got one more interview to do, and then you've got to, are there any more photography work? Like what comes next?
Yeah, so we use the same photographer for every interview. Mr. Cavalcanti should come back from Brazil about mid-October, and then we will fly him out. We've flown almost everyone out here to Southern California to the same environment where we can interview him. And then once we complete that and then send it on to the designer and do all that, we should be ready to place the order by December. It takes 4 to 6 weeks to have it printed. We'll receive a sample copy. It'll be FedEx to us, and then we'll approve the major order, which should be, I believe, at the end of January. Then the shipping takes the longest. You cannot hurry the shipping time. And so we should receive it by March, but we are largely finished with this project. 8 of 9 interviews done. Everything's on schedule, on track. And if this book goes well, we have plans for another one interviewing students of these pioneers. For example, second generation masters would include my instructor Roy Harris, John Danaher, Rafael Lovato Jr., other well-known people like that I think would give insight, and I think might be even more familiar to modern day practitioners because they're one generation closer. These are the people that they think are old school, when in fact it was really their teachers that paved the way, and we stand on their shoulders.
So I know you didn't include Horian Gracie in the book.
Yes.
Why?
We did reach out to him several times through a couple of different angles, but he was not interested in participating and said that he was working on a book of his own. So I'm happy. I'm looking forward to reading his book.
The best way to promote your own book is to be in someone else's book about you. It's not either or, it's and.
Yeah, I think we could have definitely had a great interview. Also, interestingly, we have an interview with him from Aikido Journal. After the first UFC, he was happy to grant Stanley Pranin an interview, and we actually even have original photos from that session of a young Hoist and a young Horian. and their message. We thought about bringing that into this book, but this is all current day interviews and current day photography with current day technological standards to make something that is really stunning and one of a kind.
I will hold off on releasing this podcast until the Kickstarter is ready. So if you are listening to this now, then the Kickstarter link will be in the description of this. But or where else would they go if they? Where's the Kickstarter going to be?
You can just go to Kickstarter and look for Groundswell.
Okay.
Or you can just search for BJJ or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and it will come up. We have hopefully, a lot of organic traffic and community support, as well as a number of really great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ambassadors and influencers like yourself. So we're hoping for some organic support for this project, in addition to all the people that are supporting through our ads during this brief time.
So often with Kickstarter, there's people throw in bonuses because otherwise people just sit on their asses and go, "I'll grab it when it's out." Are you guys including any bonuses for the people who move on this fast?
People that move on it fast will definitely get a discount in the price. So if you sign up right away, they're eligible for a $20 discount for the book. We decided against having a lot of digital bonuses. On my YouTube channel, as well as the BJJ Pioneers YouTube channel, which we started, we are including little excerpts of these interviews to get people hyped and to kind of let them see what we're working with here and the depth of these masters' answers. We're also doing a special version of the book. It would be more expensive. It's called a Founders Edition, where you will have your name listed in the book as a supporter, as well as getting a limited numbered edition of the book.
So while we're on the topic of books, if time and money and the ability to sell a book were of no consequence, you become independently wealthy overnight because a rich uncle dies and leaves you $100 million. What book would you write next?
What book would I write next? I would take some time and probably write the third chapter in my own personal written saga. So the first book was called The Martial Apprentice. Second book is Becoming the Black Belt. Third, I don't know what the title would be, but it's probably something to do with like mentorship and mastery. Lessons on the road of martial arts. I try to make it universal, entertaining, but something in there that kind of distills the lessons you learn. I'm 50 now. I mean, it is a totally different game than when I got involved in martial arts when I was 16. My perspective has shifted so greatly. I was all about showing off when I was younger. I was all about proving to people that I was good or I was skilled. It was about learning how to fight. So I could attract, a hot girlfriend or, a potential mate. Like all those kind of baseline biological motivators have shifted and muted so drastically. And I really see so much more that the art can do. I'm grateful to be a part of it. I want to be able to impart those lessons, particularly for young men that are, that might be adrift. That might be in a drift in a sea of information. They don't know. They're unmoored. They don't know who to listen to. It's about patience and just building yourself little by little. There are no shortcuts. It's about developing confidence in yourself, and that confidence is read by other people, and that helps you create success in the world. Confidence and enthusiasm and discipline are what young men need to hear about, rather than get rich quick schemes or, the opposite sex is a problem, or, I just, the Andrew Tates of the world.
I was going to bring him up. Damn it. You
Oh,
stole my thunder.
He's so disappointing as a human. And, he'll never, that guy, he's got some issues, and he's doing a disservice. And I don't know if I'm the guy that would be the counter to him in this cultural narrative, but I can tell you,
You'd be an improvement on him for sure.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
although that bar is
exceptionally low.
Better than Andrew Tate.
Yes. It's a doormat rather than a hurdle, but yeah, I mean that interests me. I'm at an age where I don't know if I had that many. I had a lot of good role models, but I was really looking for father figures. My father was a Marine, in World War II. He was uh, an honest man, hardworking, and dependable. But in the ways that I wanted to excel, he just he wasn't that guy for me. I realize all the good qualities of him now. And so, I felt as a teenager that there was like a lack of role models that I wanted to emulate. And I don't want young men these days to feel that way. There's a lot of guys, and it's not Rogan. Rogan was a good guy for a long time. He did a lot to popularize jiu-jitsu and MMA. And now, you live long enough, you become the villain. And then what he's enabled, the propaganda he spreads, it's really disheartening. And I think we need different role models and a different way forward.
Yeah. I'm going to miraculously resist going down the anti-Joe Rogan rabbit hole because it's such a grease chute for me to go down, and I've done it so many times. I completely agree. I was talking about this with Daniele Bolelli, and it's kind of weird how we'll call it the toxic right masculine model. Andrew Tate is the best example of it, but there are others. Basically, the women hating. Even if they're screwing women, they still hate the women. That model seems to have established itself as the only definition of masculine in the minds of many people. They seem to hold the monopoly on how to be masculine. You can't be masculine and do cool shit. You can't be masculine, do martial arts and be compassionate. You can't be masculine, I don't know, go shoot guns and be compassionate. That these things seem antithetical, or they've been framed as antithetical. And I don't believe it's antithetical at all. I mean, I think we need some models of reasonably decent human beings, hashtag better than Andrew Tate, who have some measure of compassion and empathy and respect for basic science and epistemology, and still do quote masculine shit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the far right has been able to kind of capture identity, and the identity that you want is to be, as a man, you want to be masculine, but that particular definition is incredibly brittle, right? It's so, you got to shoot guns, to really be a man, you should have the flexibility to do whatever you want, and the courage and the aptitude. I mean, why do people have like lifted 4x4s? They want to demonstrate capacity. I could rescue you off road. I could do this, even if they never do it. It's all about advertising capacity. And real masculinity is having the capacity to do whatever you want and help whoever you want, to be able to manifest, put your dent in the world, and unfortunately, that definition often lacks respect, which is really the pillar of our society. Around the world, we have a great mentor here at the CV BJJ, Glenn Hegstead. He's written a number of books, has had an incredible life, and he's traveled the world many times. The common denominator is respect. People, if you give respect, you get respect. And unfortunately, when people lose respect, whether that's far right, far left, whatever, when you lose respect for other people, you discount them. And when you don't respect their authority, I'm not talking about like police authority or anything like that, intellectual authority is being ignored. The idea that people can be more skilled than you, can know more than you, that is being ignored. And that is dangerous. You know, a one-day white belt is not the fifth degree black belt. Yeah, well, I've seen YouTube and I know just as much, you know, and I feel that I'm really good. Well, okay, you feel, but you've done no work. You haven't paid your dues. And the same thing happens with, you know, people that figure out their own science. They think they understand because they can read, but they don't really have an understanding of what that science is. You know, I know people that I respect that say they, you know, we don't really understand what's happening with the human body. No, we do. We do. One of my best friends is a toxicologist, master's in toxicology, senior scientist. If I have any scientific questions, I go to him. Science is deep. It's detailed. You know, people actually do understand. They can spend a decade studying something that you just glossed over. And that lack of respect for intellectual authority is down. Your ignorance is not as good as my knowledge. And more than any other kind of identity, that adhering to righteous ignorance and how I feel over empirical data. Empirical data is what led us out of the dark ages. I don't want to go back there. We need to stick with science. We need to stick with rationality. We need to stick with what this country was founded on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I was doing so well, Roy. I almost avoided talking about this, but on the day that we're recording it, RFK Jr. is now blaming autism on circumcision and the Tylenol that is maybe given to children after circumcision. And, quote, we don't have the data yet, but we're working on making the data. Like, sorry, you don't make the data. And you don't make these fucking assertions without data. And you don't manufacture data to fit your narrative. It's disgusting. I encourage these people, these do your own research people, to get their pilot's license, do their own research on aircraft mechanics, and then, you know, do their own repair work on their own Cessna, because they'll find out that when the plane falls out of the sky, maybe it was better to actually go pay somebody who'd been to aircraft mechanic school.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous. You know, it's like whether you find the evidence of that crime or find the evidence that circumcision leads to autism. Look at data. Look at studies. Look at the science. Mm-hmm. That is what creates greatness in a society, in a country. You know, it's forward progress. It's our only candle in the dark. And if you like jujitsu, you should like science, because jujitsu uses the scientific method of experimentation, data gathering, reassessment, reiteration, and then you stick with what works and refine those systems. And it should be self-reinforcing. If you're good at jujitsu, you should be turned on by science and finding out what really works. Or do you want to be a McDojoist? You know, really. And, you know, anti-vaccine is basically McDojo.
The trouble is that anti-vaxxers will also claim science. They'll say, well, what about this study here? But they've never actually read that study. On some podcast, somebody highlighted 2 lines of the study for them, but left out lines 3, 4, 5, and 6. Or alternately, and this is a little bit more, here's a good jiu-jitsu analogy. If we wanted to build our jiu-jitsu around techniques that really work against everybody, we'd go and we'd watch ADCC, we'd watch national championships, we'd watch the worlds, we'd watch PANs, and say, at a purple belt and higher level, here's what's working today. We would not go and watch a bunch of white belts rolling around on the ground for the first time, and one guy grabs a foot and twists it like a steering wheel, and the other guy taps out because he has no idea what he's doing. And then we would not decide that the steering wheel footlock is the next, is the bomb. The trouble is, if you have some background in science, you know that there are pay-to-play journals, and we know, like, you can get a study published that's bullshit in a bullshit journal, or published on a blog and called a journal that's not a journal, or published, in air quotes, on a YouTube video, and that's not how you release science, right? That's not the process. And that's kind of like building your entire jiu-jitsu game based around proving your jiu-jitsu by beating up day one white belts versus proving your jiu-jitsu by going and competing against other black belts at a high level. You could, if you prove your jiu-jitsu, but you only ever sparred with brand new white belts, you could make anything work. You could make absolutely anything work.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like fighting children. We're all masters when we fight children. And I think that was an excellent analogy. And dude, there's nothing wrong with pointing that out. People need a reminder. We are here because of the science that, and the immunizations and the vaccines. We would not be here healthy adults, with a lifetime of sport and promulgating this incredible human technology we call jiu-jitsu. Without that baseline, we rely on the shoulders of so many people that have built a society and continue to incrementally improve it. And so I'm afraid we're losing that. I'm not afraid to speak up about it.
Yeah. Well, one more time, what's the website for the new book?
Oh, you can go to Kickstarter. And you can look for Groundswell, The Rise of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in America. I'm really excited about this book. Feel free to subscribe to Roy Dean. I'll be releasing videos from this project, parts of the interviews. You can also go to BJJ Pioneers on YouTube. And I appreciate you taking the time to help me discuss this project. It's something I'm excited about, been working really hard on, and hopefully adds to the historicity of this incredible martial art that we practice.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Roy.
Thank you, Stephan.